So our next presentation is something a little bit different. Our presenter is Sara Pajunen. Sara Pajunen is a musician, a scholar, a composer, a multimedia artist who grew up in Hibbing, Minnesota, later went on to study at the Sibelius Academy in Finland for fiddle or the violin, depending which way you want to look at it. And she wanted to be here in person to do this presentation, which is more of a musical and philosophical journey about the effects of mining on her hometown. Unfortunately, she's having health issues and can't travel. She was going to do it live via Zoom today, but she couldn't do that for health reasons. She just wasn't feeling up to it. So today she recorded this and emailed it to us. So I'm just going to play it. And if you do have any questions for her afterwards, I can get you her email, and she will be happy to answer any questions you might have. Not getting any volume. Okay. Well, that might have something to do with it.
Hi everyone, my name is Sara Pajunen and I am here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota people. But I grew up on the Iron Range of Minnesota, which is about 3 hours north from here. And the Anishinaabe people have been living in that area for hundreds of years before my family ever arrived there. And I'm here to talk about my project called Mind Songs, Sounding an Altered Landscape. I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person or even live virtually. I'm dealing with some health concerns, and so I'm recording this video day of. But I hope the symposium has been wonderful, and I thank Dan Truckee for asking me to present some of my artwork here. My family came to the Iron Range of Minnesota from Finland and Slovenia about 100 and then some of them 120 years ago. I have spent time in Europe. I lived in Finland for many years, and I'm interested in the change that happened with European immigration, the change in our connection with land and environment. The Iron Range of Minnesota started off as underground mining, but pretty quickly moved to strip mining, open pit mining of iron ore in the late 1800s. And so I grew up learning the violin around all these pit lakes. If you're familiar with mining areas, you probably know that once you extract as much as you can from an area, the pits are left open and they fill with rainwater or spring water and become this beautiful azure color often. And then also there are the overburden piles. And so the landscape is completely transformed when you have an open pit mining region. And I didn't think much about it as a child. It was just my home landscape. But later in my life, I just became more interested in knowing the land in a different way. Because I feel as a European American, my ancestors and most immigrants, entered environments, and just became more interested, entered extraction industries, entered a relationship with the land that stemmed from profit, and it was, resource driven and in a non-renewable way, which was very different than the way that Anishinaabe and Dakota and other Native peoples had been relating to the land for centuries or millennia. And so now in this current time, 2023, we ask ourselves, how did we end up here? So that's part of my inquiry with this project, getting to know the landscapes around me better. I am trained as a violinist and as a musician, and I became interested in field recording, environmental recording, sound recording some years ago. And in that field, you use different types of microphones to record sounds in the environment. So the types of microphones that we're used to record sound through the air, but I have microphones that can record sound through water or through vibration, through surface only, such as metal, for example, that can record like radio waves, that can record just softer sounds that we wouldn't normally be able to perceive with the human ear. So some years ago, when I started the project Mind Songs, I set out to just explore the region with these microphones and listen to both the man-made environments and also to the natural environments. For me, listening is it's a meditation. It's a type of is a way of slowing our brain. It's presence, and it's a way of really communicating something. Well, it's listening to something. It's literally listening intently and with focus. And so I wondered how listening intently would change my environment, my childhood environment, how I could flip these relationships or question the relationships that I had with the land because of extraction industry, because of immigrant culture and the way that everyone entered a system that was profit-driven. And just the way that I could find more groundedness and peace for myself in an environment that I loved and felt like my childhood, but didn't feel like my ancestral home, because I've also lived and spent a lot of time in one of my major ancestral homes. And the connection that I feel with the land there is something much more profound and generational than what I feel with the Iron Range of Minnesota. So I'll share some examples of the work now. It's compositional work. It's not only just environmental recordings. I added violin because part of it for me was a very personal journey also with my artistry, to combine interests and ground myself in my artwork, continue searching for what felt like a full and true representation of my life on this planet so far, and where I want to go, what I'm interested in, and honoring where I've been.
Täällä pohjan tähten alla on nyt kotimamme, mutta tähten tuolla puolen toisen kohdon saamme. Täällä on kun kukkasilla aika lyhyt meillä, siellä ilo loppumaton niin kuin enkeleillä. Täällä sydän huokailee ja itku silmän täyttää, siellä sydän iloitsee ja silmä riemun näyttää. Sinne toivon siivillä sydän pieni lennä, siellä ilo loppumaton niin kuin enkeleillä. That's a pretty song about angels, and I wish I was a little bird. I could fly to heaven like an angel. It's a starting.
Kertoilenpa nämä kertaset, kaunehen kanasen, kallehen hyväsen kantajaisesta. Laadinpa tällä ajalla nämä lauluset, armahan alliseni, armahan hyväsen aikojaisesta. Kasvatteli tuo kallis kantajainen kaksi kaunista kannettuista. Pidätteli ihana imettäjäinen pikkaraisia pitelemäisiään. Varsin vantterasti valkien hyväsen vaaliainen noita vakahaisia vaalimaisiaan. Hanhiparven hautojainen hautoilempi lintusiaan. Kamalat kaavinnat kaatoivat kauneen kantajaisen. Luvatta kajottiin kylmäosaiseen kylvettäjäiseen. Kohtua koeteltiin liian kovasti. Liian aikaisin katkesi kauneen kantajaisen kalliit aikaset. Kovin aikaisin lähti aikojainen armahiin syntyisin. Voi kuinka kaipailin nuo kaksi kaunista kannettuista, kallista kantajaista. Pikkaraiset pitelemäiset, ihanaista imettäjäänsä ikävöivät.
if unhindered, and 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 if unhindered, the American people should strive to conserve an industrious system and has functioned efficiently and successfully in their interests.
Profitable and successful industrial projects. Better automobiles.
Better automobiles.
She is slag. She is slag. She is crushed stone, unburied, geologic, Masabi iron. I slide over her body, the excavation. I drift over knee and shin and float over her shattered self, heaped upon the earth. Over boulders submerged, emptied and made into freight. A cold current from the drift. The bow lifts. She is bedrock, the bottom of the continent. Through her runs dark and invisible rivers without shore. She is the divide. In seams of the tectonic plates, she is lit with dynamite and extracted, carried by trains to the ship. I see a shoulder of iron. In place of her head, a deep shaft. Remade, she becomes steel, becomes bridge, becomes beam.
Okay, did she join on Zoom yet? Okay, so why don't we pull her up on the screen? Sara has decided to join us. She says she's feeling up to it, so we're going to have her come on and she can talk a little bit more about it. If you have any questions, you can ask her. So here, why don't I stop this? There she is. Hello, Sara.
Hello.
How are you feeling?
I'm okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm actually fighting a pretty serious breast cancer at the moment, so I had a difficult morning and I just couldn't speak live about things, but I'm happy to join you for some questions if there are any.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions you'd like to ask Sara about the film? We've got one coming here.
I was wondering where the images came from. Who made them?
Yeah, I make all the images. I'm an audiovisual artist, so they all come from me. I do a lot of drone work. This was a compilation of many Mind Songs pieces. The initial one that came is archival footage from a mining film made in 1936, Oliver Mining. The rest are mine.
I had the feeling that it was too bright in here.
Oh, probably.
Usually
Yes.
they are projected in bright light. I mean, often projections happen in too bright environments, and I had the feeling they would be more atmospheric, even in a darker place.
Yeah, probably the lights should have been off. This work was just exhibited in the gallery space. And yes, it's dark usually.
Yeah, okay.
With headphones.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sara?
Did you do all the singing yourself?
Uh, some of it was archival from the Alan Lomax collection of recordings from Michigan, Upper Midwest. And the lament, which in Finnish is called Itku laulu, it was sung by a friend of mine, Emmi Kuitinen. She lives in Finland. It's traditional Karelian lament singing from the eastern part of modern Finland. It was written actually, Emmi made that lament specifically for my grandmother, who died in 1936 when my father was just a few years old. She died pretty tragically. So Emmy was kind enough to make a lament specifically for her. And that piece actually showed the destruction of the boarding house that my great-grandparents ran. My great-grandparents raised my father, and that boarding house, and that was where my grandmother was born, was destroyed over the period of a few years, and I documented it. And all of these works are in their full forms on my Patreon page. They probably make more conceptual sense when you sit with one and you read the descriptions. And all the descriptions are on my website as well.
Are there any other questions? Michael has one. Just a second.
Phil Dana here. It's obviously a very dark film. I feel like after a long abstinence from drinking, starting drinking again, which I won't. But I was wondering, right toward the very end, if I heard the narration correctly, there was a river flowing through a mining pit. I saw all this sort of ragged sandstone along the cliff, but yet I saw water that looked clean. And after all these scenes of destruction, I was wondering about what was in that particular scene.
Yeah, that piece is called In the Water-Filled Mine Pit. I just want to preface that what you saw right now is not a full film. It's excerpts from audio-visual works that are meant for galleries or to be viewed online. So it's not an entire narration in itself. It's a compilation of many different things in this project. And that piece was based on poetry by the Finnish-American poet Sheila Paka, and she recorded in her own voice as well. And that that is a tailing. I mean, it's a mine pit. It's a water-filled mine pit. So the water that you see there is in the mine pit, like a lake, except it's not a natural lake, and it is pretty clean and clear because it's been filled with rainwater and spring water, and it's not very old. And they're very deep. On the Mesabi Iron Range, they can be up to 500 feet deep.
Any other questions, Sara? Comments? I just want to say I just thought the visuals were fantastic, and the music. What a wonderful combination! And in the footage, the initial footage that you had, the film footage of them doing the shipping and all of that, I thought that the music was just it's such a dichotomy to how we often think of things like that, which would have like ragtime music or, big band music. Here they are at work. To have this very atmospheric and almost ominous sound to it. Was that something you were going for?
Yes, I think it is very ominous what has happened. And I think the reason we had ragtime music or some music like that is because we were trying to celebrate, New America and the ideals of New America, extraction industries and capitalism, basically. So I do see it as quite ominous, and very beautiful as well, and interesting and hopeful and all sorts of different things. Yeah, and the compositions are based. They're somewhere between sound art and music. They involve improvisation, some chance music, field recordings. So also like sound art, and they really came from me listening to the environment for really long periods of time. And I would say they're best taken in with headphones. So the gallery exhibit had headphones, and then you're really immersed in it.
Hello, thank you for your work. Any eeling from mining?
Any what from mining?
Eeling?
Eeling?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Eeling. Getting your health back.
Healing.
Sorry for my French accent.
Oh, from mining?
Yeah.
So you mean, has mining caused me to heal, or is am I healing from the harm of mining?
Well, the way in which you want to answer it.
Both, absolutely. I love where I'm from. I love so much of the history. I just think it's a lot broader than what we've been told. There's yeah, that's a very complicated question for somebody that's dealing with very serious cancer and thinking about epigenetic trauma, thinking about the trauma of immigration. That I think, European Americans still carry, thinking the trauma all around us and the makeup of America, thinking of my own, family trauma, and also loving where I come from and knowing all the beauty of it. I mean, life is just a lot of contrasts. So yes, and yes.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, Barb?
It just seemed it was a really fitting presentation for this day. I felt like it really pulled everything together, and I really appreciate it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Any other comments? Well, Sara, thank you so much for joining us and for your beautiful work. And hopefully we can bring it as a gallery installation here at Northern sometime in the future. We'll work on that. So
That would be nice. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone.
all right. Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Well, that's